quorum here. We have a few people who called in tonight. So we'll call this Board of Directors meeting to order at 7:01 PM. Board has land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement posted to its website. Roll call tonight. Sonia is an excused absence. Brian, I think, is going to be gone. He might be here a little late. Asia has an excused absence, and Linda has an excused absence. Otherwise, tonight in attendance, we have Timey, Stu, wow, I just lost my
Sam.
brain, just stopped working there for a second. Sam, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
see.
It's a long day. AJ and Nancy and Keith. And then we have Aaron Hayes with us as well as a guest.
And you have me remote.
And Gail's remote, yes. So before we adopt the agenda, just one quick item. I'd like to amend the agenda to move to change out to just swap 6C and 6A on so move the capital request for the maintenance shop down, bring the approval request for the appeals process up. And Aaron's here. The reason is Aaron's here to answer any questions regarding that. And then he can leave, so he doesn't have to stay here longer. Does anybody have any objections to that amendment? All right, hearing none, that is approved. I'll make a motion then that we adopt the amended agenda.
Second.
Nancy seconds, all those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. First item on the agenda is announcements. Do we have any announcements?
I have probably a few announcements about NNE and the election.
Go ahead, Gail.
We emptied the ballot box last Friday for the first time, and we had 13 ballots. We'll empty it again tomorrow, and I expect to have considerably more. I received my postcard today, alerting people to the fact that they mustn't follow any instructions on the back of the ballot. I don't think there's too much fuss about that. I'm not hearing people very confused, but I'm glad that the postcard went out. We'll have a candidate forum Saturday, pretty much following the budget town hall. It will be 4 to 6, and then the budget town hall is 1:30 to 3:30. As I understand, there's going to be cake in between the two events. So hopefully that will motivate people to come. And I think that's it for now.
All right, any other announcements?
I'd like to remind everyone that ballots must be deposited in the ballot box. Many members have been frustrated because they can't turn them in at the administrative office. They drive into the Welcome Center. It's easier to park there than to drive all the way down to the clubhouse, and they want to give us their ballots. And we tell them we can't accept them, that they must place them in the ballot box. So tell your friends and your neighbors that their ballots have to go into the Sudden Valley ballot box, which is located inside the clubhouse at 4 Clubhouse Circle, right next to the lobby of El Agave. Thank you.
Or into the US mail.
Yes, of course, everyone can mail their ballots, but if they want to put it in the box themselves, we can't take it at the Welcome Center.
Sorry.
Any other announcements? Amy?
The only thing I can think of is that I don't think we've ever introduced Kyle Kaltenbach, which I'm going to mess up your name again, as the new chief of staff. And I know a couple of people have asked your name and who you are. So I think maybe we should just kind of let the community know that you have taken on that position.
Welcome to Kyle.
Welcome, Kyle.
All right, any other announcements? All right, we'll move on to property owner comments. Like to speak? You're the only one here.
Can you hear me? I'm just regaining my voice from illness. So.
I'm saying, can you get
Right.
real close to the mic or it won't go on the record?
Okay, I'll try to speak up. So, board members, I have a simple request. And that is, I ask that you remain diligent when committing funds to capital improvement projects. So I'll elaborate. In the last 25 years, the water quality in Lake Whatcom has declined significantly. And this is expected to continue under the business as usual scenario. In fact, we're at the cusp of an unprecedented cyanobacteria problem that's going to be an immediate danger for the residents and pets of Sudden Valley. But this is a designated impaired watershed, so it's reasonable to assume that mitigation strategies will be broadened to include new measures that will directly affect Sudden Valley. Change is imminent, and Sudden Valley has a big target on our back. We have a target on our back because we represent one of the biggest threats to the watershed. First of all, because of our recreational activities on the waterfront, golf, marina, dog park. But also, we have a 50-year track record of environmental destruction and negligence, which is surprisingly well documented, but also very visible. You walk around any neighborhood, you'll see numerous misscaled houses squeezed into small lots, nearly denuded of trees. So, developers have lorded over this community for decades, and the evidence is everywhere. So removing trees is problematic because for a couple of reasons. They provide outsized benefits. The trees are by far the most effective means, the most cost-effective means, I should say, for preventing lake water degradation because they minimize sediment loading. But the reality is that trees are being supplanted with multi-million-dollar mechanical filtration systems. We have one here in Sun Valley on Marigold Drive, the Connect system, I think. There's, the $15 million DAF retreatment facility. And who pays for this? Well, so far, it's been the people of Bellingham. I mean, they subsidize our development and recreation. But people are slowly beginning to realize this and waking up, taking note. So I think that's going to be one catalyst for change. I mean, there's going to be others, there's going to be lawsuits and things like that. But for these reasons, I think decisions affecting our lifestyle are forthcoming. Decisions grounded in data, not made by this board or any future board, but by environmental agencies. Furthermore, I suspect that the fuse for change is very short, much shorter than most of you imagine. Just remember how readily they banned two-stroke engine watercraft not long ago. So I'm not advocating for recreation facility closures or operating changes, and I'm not pinning past transgressions on this board. However, I think it is fiducially irresponsible and reckless to make capital investments in long-term projects, given the very real possibility that project could be rendered non-operational before the project life is fully realized. So, I don't know everything about this. There's more that I don't know. So I understand if you can, dismiss me as Chicken Little, but I do believe that as elected representatives of this community, it's incumbent upon you to conduct risk assessments before making big capital investments. For example, it would be irresponsible to pour money into our marina, the one constructed of discarded tires, if there's a reasonable chance that motorboats will be banned in a few years. You have to look into that. And then one more thing, sorry if I'm exceeding my time here, and it's inextricably related, and that's capital investments and how they are represented or presented to the community in oversimplified ways. So capital costs are usually described one of two ways, whether or not they'll trigger a special assessment or if they are already accounted for in the budget. But I'd like to see capital costs more explicitly inserted into the general cost equation. For instance, some argue that golf revenue helps lower our dues. However, this ignores all the capital investments we, the community, provided golf, like the recent bridge replacement comes to mind. So I'm not picking on golf. This accounting practice, which implicitly discounts capital costs, is commonplace. It's even on our advisory votes on the ballot. So I would ask that capital investment costs should be presented in more detail. There's opportunities or costs, there's foregone interest on earnings associated with these costs. Why not amortize the capital costs over the life of the project and express it as a present value annual expense, right? I mean, I think this would allow more of a vis-a-vis comparison with operating costs and revenue. So sorry I exceeded my allowance, a lot of time, and I want to thank you for your volunteerism and for listening. Sorry, my voice is pretty bad, but thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. What was your name again?
Kevin Nesbitt. Kevin Nesbitt. Kevin Nesbitt.
Kevin. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. We'll move on then from property owner comments. And the next item on the agenda is a closed session for legal. Make a motion that we move into closed session. Seconds, all those in favor? Passes unanimously. All right.
Might as well take this.
Take that water.
It is only one.
No worries, I just gotta track motions. Alright. Absolutely.
I'm here.
This is Joanne. We're in the closed session. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Excellent. So we're just gathering. Haven't started yet.
Okay.
So we're just gonna have a quick update on the Hey, Dale, could you mute on your side? There's some weird noise coming through.
I put it on speaker. Let me just see if I take that off. Is this better? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me just kill this. Okay, leave.
Well, I didn't know how long.
Nice to meet you. Have a good time with them.
Use Linda's spot too, huh?
Spread out.
All right, I will make a motion that we move back into open session at 7:34 PM.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. No action will be taken as a result of closed session. Move on to the next agenda item, which is the GM report. I'll pass it to Joanne.
Thank you. September saw the association changing gears, closing down summer programs and starting to support cool weather activities. Planning for winter events and winter weather is now in full swing. I'll start with some remarks on election season. September does mark the start of election season at Sudden Valley. Ballot packets were mailed earlier this year than previous years. In fact, on September the 27th, giving residents additional time to make their decisions and cast their vote. There was an error on the instructions printed on the back of the ballot. It was addressed by posting notices on the SVCA website and Facebook page, as well as sending a special e-blast. To make sure that every voting member was informed of the error, SVA chose to mail a special postcard giving notice of the error and clarifying that members should vote for only 3 board candidates. Hopefully, you have all received those postcards, so you don't need to see an example. The ballot box has been put into position. It was placed on Friday, the 29th of September in the clubhouse outside of El Agave, where it is under 24-hour video surveillance. And we're having security review that footage at the end of every shift to ensure that we have notice of any disturbance around that ballot box. As Gail informed us, the first candidate forum was held on October the 5th, an estimated attendance of about 40 to 50 people, but many more have viewed that recording online. As of today, the count was 280 total views. I'm highlighting that because I think it's important to understand that the recordings we make do get traction in the community, and there is a consistent set of folks who do access them. So while it feels a little empty whilst we have these meetings, they are being viewed. A second candidate forum is planned for this Saturday following the town hall meeting. I'd like to summarize some of the actions that were taken about the marina this year. Because as part of the candidate forum last week, a claim was made that the association did not obtain a third-party assessment of the docks prior to planning for their replacement in 2029, which is the projected end of life for those wet slip docks. That is a false statement. In January of this year, at the recommendation of our capital projects manager, Tyler Andrews, SVCA hired Ashton Engineering to complete an assessment of the wet slip docks. Based on that report, on March 9th, 2023, the board approved the capital request that authorized funding for the preparation of a preliminary design for replacing the docks, along with an engineer's estimate for that replacement. The primary purpose of this activity was to support capital planning. The preliminary design and engineer's estimate were shared with the board on July 27th as part of the capital budget presentation. Anyone who would like to review the documents associated with the evaluation of the docks or to see the details of the proposed design and engineer's estimate can see them in the posted board agenda packets online for the March 9th and July 27th meeting. I'd also like to take a minute to highlight golf revenues. As I mentioned in several of my reports, the golf course has been having an extremely successful year. September has continued that trend despite the fact that we experienced less favorable weather this year than last. In 2023, golf revenues for September were about $170,000 compared to 2022 revenues when $155,000 was taken in. I'd like to recognize the great job being done by golf staff, but also by our turf care team, whose care of the course has improved play even when we experience significant amounts of rain in a short period like we did this past month. And just for the record books, there was a week where we received more than 2 inches over the course of about 3 days. And yet the course remained, I'm told, playable since I don't know a golf club from a tennis racket.
We did have to call one tournament.
I also wanted to, off the cuff, respond to Stu, your question regarding how we charge for rounds and the fee structure. I wanted to follow up on that question because I gave you misleading information. Our fees for members are set and are not subject to variable pricing. But for the past 6 years, the course has used variable pricing for non-member rounds. So the rate that the board is approving is called the rack rate. And this is allowed in the contractual documents, subject to review by the general manager. And at the time that was completed. So there are variable rates being used, and we should be glad of that because over the years that they've been in practice, they do tend to improve the revenues of courses who use those variable rates. And it makes sense. It's like airlines. If you want to fly at a peak time, you have to pay more for that. And that's the same way that it works on the golf course. But the thing to know is that I was also correct in saying that our software couldn't handle it. It can't. So what our software does is it opens a window to a different vendor who just does arbitrage on the pricing. So we were all right and we were all a little bit wrong too. So I wanted to clear that up, Stu, since you had raised the issue.
Thank you.
The rest of the report has been delivered in hard copy to directors and will be posted on the website. For those of you who haven't figured this out yet, the GM report also forms the substance of Around the Valley. So it's printed in the views, not my front parts, but all of the task lists for the various departments are produced there in the views every month. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Joanne, did you ever take a look at the Valley 50th anniversary fair and come to any conclusions like how many people attended and how much money how much it cost, how much we made off it, did it balance, all that kind of review?
The short answer is yes, a report on the activities of the fair, how much was spent, how much was brought in, who attended, is being prepared. It's not complete for presentation at this time.
Okay, thank you. Just curious.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on. The next item on the agenda was amended, so we'll do approval request for the appeals process. I'll pass that back to Joanne.
The purpose of this memo is to request approval of the proposed rules of procedure for appeals. Article 5, Section 6 of the bylaws for the Sudden Valley Community Association provides that appeals by any individual who has received a notice of violation of the restrictive covenants, the bylaws or rules and regulations, and establishes an appeals committee that is tasked with hearing the appeals. The bylaws also provide that the appeals committee is responsible to prepare, update, publish, and operate written guidelines and procedures for appeals. SVCA does not currently have established rules or procedures for hearing appeals. When I wrote that statement, I hardly thought how controversial it would become. To address this, SVCA attorney Richard Davis was asked to draft guidelines for the appropriate conduct of appeals. The proposed rules process that is established protocol.
Ryan, can you mute?
But it is still manageable for the association and the individuals who might wish to appeal. While the process allows for the participation of legal counsel, it does not require it, ensuring that all members can participate. So I request that the Board of Directors adopt a resolution approving the proposed rules of procedure for appeals. Because new information has come to light since this memo was written, I'd like to address some confusion around whether an appeals policy had been in place. There is evidence showing that an appeals procedure was available to Sudden Valley previously. Unfortunately, we have a version from 2015 that differs from the version from 2016 that also differs from the version in 2018. And we could not and cannot find evidence showing what, if any, process was currently approved by the board and still in place. So when I say in my memo that we do not currently have established rules or procedures for hearing appeals, I'm referring to that level of confusion. And I think that it's super important to manage appeals in a way that is completely above board and consistent. Striking at the pocketbook of someone is a serious matter. And if they want to take issue with a fine that has been applied to them for a violation, they should have that right to do so. And everyone should have the same right, and it should be clearly defined, in my opinion. So we brought forth this proposal. The procedure is a little bit complicated, but I hope that you've all had time to review it. And we have our counsel here to answer some of our questions. So thank you.
All right. Well, I'll make a motion that the board of directors adopt the resolution approving the proposed rules of procedure for appeals.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on that? Timing?
Well, I mean, you have addressed the fact that there actually was an appeals committee procedure, which was on our website and current up until, I believe, about 3 weeks ago when a 404 code suddenly showed up. I just find that we had a procedure that was working, and now we have made it much more convoluted. There's a lot more rules that make it very hard for people who want to have an appeal. We have a lot of whereases and now therefores, a lot of rules on how this is, it is quite different from what we had on the website before. Bringing legal counsel into an appeals situation at the discretion of SVCA, I think is very intimidating for anybody who has an appeal. And it just seems like overkill to me. It says also in section D, establishment of hearing date, the appellant may request the hearing to be rescheduled for good cause shown. However, the decision to reschedule shall rest in the sole discretion of the chair and shall be final. So that means if someone says, I can't make it, and SVCA doesn't think their excuse is good enough, what might be important to me as a reason why I cannot make an appeal hearing may not be important to the chair, and I think that is, that's unacceptable. I think we need to work with our members and make sure if it's an important reason why they can't make it, we can't just say, I don't think that's a good enough reason. Now we have witnesses will not be allowed to testify. It makes it, there's just a lot of things that work against. The chair shall decide in the interest of justice whether evidence will be excluded. I'm not sure that that's fair either, because depending on who is appealing or the personal bias of the chair, I think can't exclude any materials. I think the entire appeals committee should be allowed to see all the evidence. Chair shouldn't be able to throw out random information. And the decision need not contain detailed findings of fact or conclusion. And I don't think that's fair to our members. I think maybe we need to look at this a little further, compare it to what we originally had and make it a little bit more fair to our members. This seems, it really seems like we are not having our members' best interests at heart when we're doing this.
I have a question for Tommy. That paper you were waving around there, is that the December 10th, 2015 version?
No, it is one that was on the website is the January 18th, 2016. And it was fine. It was on the website up until 3 weeks ago.
It's the same one. It's the December 15th. That's when it was approved by the board. If you look in the minutes, you can find it there, which is where I found it this afternoon. So it is on the website. It's just fairly well buried. So it's when it was approved.
And
And-
what's wrong with it?
Huh?
And what's wrong with it? It's a fair process.
No, it's vague. It's arbitrary. It is nothing that will be consistently administered because it just depends on whoever's doing the sharing of the thing feels like it. And it's quite possible that identifying people as part of a hearing is a bad thing for those people. They will possibly be harassed.
Who's going to be harassed?
I said it's possible.
I'm
If
not,
somebody goes in and says,
I think you're meaning witnesses, right?
right, witnesses. It's just, it's vague. And this, which of course was written by a lawyer, but this is a legal process because it represents money. And the minute you get money involved, you better be consistent and not arbitrary. So yeah, I read that thing this afternoon. I also saw evidence of several others that I never did find that were proposed, possibly approved subsequently. So who knows?
well, I find this one quite a bit more arbitrary when you look at the chair can decide whether or not your excuse to change the date is good enough. The chair can decide whether to throw out your evidence. I find that.
Who do
very
you
arbitrary.
suggest decides that?
The chair, it says,
I know, but who do you suggest would actually decide? Someone has to make decisions
I think
in
if-
the meeting when it's this type of process, and that is the chair. Like,
Why would
there
they
is an
throw out
appeal to
evidence?
The remaining board if the the person who's appealing it is not satisfied with the ruling.
why would the chair not allow certain evidence to be seen? That is really easy if the chair has a certain bias, because to just say, no, I don't like this evidence, I'm going to set it aside. That is not fair to our members.
But I actually think that's a good question to refer to Aaron.
refer to section 6, paragraph, it does set some guidance and limitations on rules that the chair would consider in issuing evidentiary rulings. Most of those are based on Washington State Rules of Evidence. Now, say the appeals committee's decision would be appealed to Washington Superior Court, which would be the ultimate result of litigation that's ongoing. The court would, expect that there'd be some evidentiary structure, which we provide here, but it's never expected for these types of appeals at this informal level that those rules strictly adhere to. That's why we included the explicit directive or guidance in section GI, discussing that when you have personal attacks on an opposing party, when clearly the witness statements are not factual in nature or appear to be not relevant, then the chair can reject that evidence. Now, those rulings will be issued on the record, and the party who is subject to those rulings can, say they go to the next level and fully appeal it to the board. They can request as part of their appeal that those evidentiary rulings be reviewed. Of course, it would then appeal again to the Superior Court before it would again.
Why not just let all the members of the appeals committee see it all and make their own decision on whether it's reasonable or not? If it's completely unreasonable, all of the appeals committee members will be able to see that. But if it's one person deciding, no, I'm not going to pass this information on, that doesn't seem fair to our members. And why can't witnesses speak now?
So Richard and I attempted to draft policy that we felt set forth a fair set of rules based on our experience with other informal appeals processes, not just on the homeowners association level. We look at with other state agencies, for example, labor and industry, their informal appeals structure. We tried to do something that would provide an expedited or streamlined process for the association during that cost, but then also allow what we, based on our experience, would be considered due process by court if they were to look at all the rights that were allowed. The limitation on allowing live testimony is really an attempt to expedite the process, but there's no limitations on the numbers of sworn statements that those witnesses can admit prior. So the party had 10 witnesses they wanted to testimony for, they could do that and have someone sign a sworn statement. And that's really just to help expedite the process. But that is ultimately a decision for the board, considering whether or not to allow a live witness testimony, or whether to simply require sworn statements.
When you say these are
I've had my hand up for a bit.
One sec, Gail, you're next.
Are you calling on me?
Go ahead, Nancy, then Gail, then Sam.
these aren't notarized sworn statements. You can just sign something that says.
Can
"I
everyone please
swear."
try and talk into the microphone?
Yeah,
Microphone.
I'm asking if those witness statements have to be notarized, which is kind of a pain to do, or you can just sign something saying, "I swear."
So they are signed under penalty of.
Can you talk a bit closer? Because we can hear you, but the recording can't.
They are signed under penalty of perjury, but they are not notarized. That's because even for submitting affidavits to state court, they are not required to be notarized. You simply have to have signed it under penalty of perjury. And that is the form that we've used. And you'll see that attached as a example on the proposed policy that Richard and I drafted.
Gail?
Thank you. I essentially would like to see the appeals process discussion tabled. When I did my research today, I found something marked final that was dated March let's see, I wrote the date down because I just looked for it again, March 14th, 2017. And it seemed to be signed by the general manager and et cetera. So there's some confusion about the history, but more to the point for me is that I think there's an element of unfairness in assessing a fine against a member who then appeals. And when that person seeks guidance on what process to use, finds guidance, and then suddenly mid-process, that guidance is being changed. To me, that is, it just, it doesn't feel good at all. And I think it's really important in our valley, and we keep coming back to it. We want to treat people fairly. We want to treat everyone the same. No special privileges or preferential treatment, but also no special punitive treatment. Now, I haven't been able to spend time looking into the appeals thing, except a little bit today, because I'm up to my eyebrows in getting, election, working on the form and et cetera. And that's why I would request to table. I also noticed that several board members couldn't be here tonight. And I think to have a robust discussion would be helpful to have their input. So I guess, I know I can't vote. I don't know if I can make motions. I would move to table if that's allowable. And we don't have a parliamentarian, but I'm sure someone can speak to that.
There a second?
Yes, I second that this should be tabled, but I'm not opposed to continuing discussion at this time also.
I think we have to vote up.
Discussion at this time is now on tabling the motion. So I would suggest that we continue to move it forward. Doesn't help to continue to delay things. There's obviously been a number of processes used over the last decade in various different documents, as proved by everybody coming to this meeting today with some form of some committee appeals process. And so I think it is prudent, and Joanne made the right decision to ask Richard to draft us a policy in that regard. And I think it makes sense to continue to move it forward. So any other discussion on tabling? Nancy, then Timmy.
She was first. So.
The only other comment that I have, because of some of the appeals that are waiting to be heard by the appeals committee, I find it strange that suddenly we have a much more difficult appeals process going forward. And yet, at the candidate forum, I know Josh Bowens mentioned in his 3 years, he did not know of any appeals. The year that he has been off, there was one. So we are not talking about appeal, like this does not come up all the time. Why are we going to our attorney? Why are we making such a convoluted, such a difficult?
You already know the answer to that question, Timmy.
I guess I do.
Yeah.
I guess I wonder if we're trying to make somebody's appeal more difficult to win.
No, we're getting our legal counsel's advice on how to proceed as an association.
How about
that's what
you
this
hear those
advice
appeals
is.
under the original rules of when the fines were given out?
There were no original rules. There's
Yes, there
nothing
were.
approved by the board.
It was on our website, and I do believe, from what I understand, that Richard Davis actually went through this particular draft and approved it. I can't speak, not sure that that's 100% true, but it's my understanding.
There is some validity to all of the different versions. That's exactly the problem. And in
Yep.
addition to the ones that you guys have brought and are discussing, there is a 2018 version that trumps them all. So.
Then
and
maybe
I'm
we should
trying
go
to-
back to tabling it.
Well, I'm trying to recover that version now, but it's corrupted and it's on Google Drive and I can't restore it. I have contacted people who may be able to help me, but that's the issue, is that there is some validity to every single one of these versions. Some were on the website, some were approved in minutes, some have a more current date. And so that confusion has led us to the place where we are now.
AJ?
Am I in the queue? Should we recognize?
I think I have the floor right now, Gail, and I'd like to speak in support of AJ. I don't think we should table this right now, as we've heard from the general manager and the board president. We do not have an appeals process. We have a hodgepodge of things that you can download and find, but they're all different. So there is no one thing we can go to. And the one I have read is pretty darn vague and can be anything anybody wants it to be, which is a really dangerous thing in a legal document. So I support voting against the tabling motion.
Well, I'd like to speak quickly one more time in support of tabling, because from what I'm hearing from the GM and a sense from you, Nancy, is that there are myriad versions of the appeals process out there. Now, I'm surprised that Rich, who presumably would have been involved in all of them, couldn't pinpoint the last one. That's why I'm suggesting tabling. I think it's dangerous to go forward and enact a policy with, not the full complement of board members, for one, with confusion about what was the last valid appeals procedure. And then three, because we have a board member who is appealing, I think she should be extended some courtesy too, so that people can look at this and be confident they're doing the right thing. I can't vote. And in fact, I'm feeling under the weather, and I probably am going to, excuse myself. But that would be my request, that we table, maybe just until the next meeting, and try and get clarification from Rich. What was the last one that you brought forward that you could speak to? And what was the one that that Tommy relied on when she sought guidance? I would think that would have a lot of validity, to be fair, just to be fair. So thank you all. I'm going to
Ryan?
see you all tomorrow. I'll see Joanne tomorrow for the ballots.
I would be in favor of saying no to the tabling motion. We went to Rich Davis. He has written what appears to me to be a very clear policy, which we didn't have before, and we should proceed with that motion on that clear policy.
I just wanted to say that I'm not opposed to getting something defined, that's for sure. But what I am opposed to, I didn't realize there was people like pending appeal process right now. So with that, I just realized that now. I think those people should be under whatever the last thing published. That's what it should follow. And I know Joanne said she's waiting for help from IT or something to get something from 2018, which sounds like it might be the most current document, but she's unable to get it due to being corrupted. But was that one approved by the board at the time, but we just can't see that? Or either way, whether it was or not, it sounds like it's all a convoluted mess. So we do need to get that straightened and organized. But I feel anybody that's currently going through the appeal process should go by whatever our last documents that were published. That's it. Thank you.
Stu?
Yeah, I'm assuming that it's not being tabled, so we're just going on with the discussion, or are we still talking about tabling? Still talking about tabling?
We haven't called this a vote.
We haven't voted yet.
I know we haven't voted yet, so. The other reason that I would consider tabling, and I would be for tabling, is the way this is written. It tends to subvert the bylaws of the organization. And there's actually misstatements in here. The appeals committee obviously has previously adopted, and whether they are board approved or not is unknown. You guys may be privy to those board resolutions. I haven't reviewed them. But as this is written, it is not accurate. And it does tend to subvert the bylaws because the bylaws clearly say that the appeals committee is supposed to propose the appeals process, and then the board approves that. So if we're not going to approve, have a committee put the process forth, then we should change the bylaws.
It doesn't. Our legal counsel reviews that. So this is another statement being made by board directors who are pretending to know more than professionals who have licenses in law. Like, I'm pretty sure Richard and Aaron here can probably attest to that, that Richard has made sure our policy isn't subverting or in conflict with our bylaws. That's one of his main tenets of his job.
Excuse me, Director Tishelder, I don't appreciate the condescending remarks.
Well, I don't appreciate people making false statements. Seems to be a common theme these days between people. So, can you speak to that, Aaron? Does it subvert or conflict with our bylaws?
I know from speaking with Richard that he analyzed that issue as far as whether or not the board was restricted in suggesting or adopting procedures that the appeals committee would then review. I understand from speaking with him that he determined the board could do that, and hence why the resolution has been proposed today. My role within this has been to help craft the specific, assist Richard in crafting the specific appeals process that has been proposed. I was not privy to Richard's initial analysis as far as the bylaws question that you posed to, but I of course defer to his expertise on that. I will say, in speaking with Richard about this and looking at the other various issues, the reason Richard and I proposed the new policy be put forward is because of the confusion that was communicated to us by board leadership regarding which processes were truly in place. And because of that confusion, our sole focus here is to ensure that there is clear standard in drafting policy that ensures due process for the members. And that was what we were asked to do. And based on the confusion we were communicated to us, we determined that if a court was to look at an ongoing debate about what policies applied in the confusion, it would be impossible for appeals to move forward with clear due process with that confusion among the leadership and among the members. So Richard and I advised that the board move forward in adopting a due process now with a new policy that just sets the standard for appeals moving forward and allows the board and the members to get past this confusion that we've been informed about.
Could you just tell me when you were approached by the board to make the changes?
I believe AJ might be able to best answer that. Richard came to me.
Nancy,
Call the question.
any other discussion? Sam?
Being that as vice president at this time, looking these things over, it's like I would not touch this stuff with a 10-foot pole myself, because then I'm picking and choosing. So as far as tabling goes, I am not going to be voting on that, because that would be in my position something I shouldn't be doing because the question. So I just like to clear that up, that I am being one that's going to be possibly or always looking at evidence, finding people on the appeals committee, working with them. I'm going to not be taking a position on any of this. It's going to be up to the rest of you to figure this out, because as long as I'm acting as the neutral chair in moving procedures forward, me making a choice on this is not something I am going to do. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, the motion on the table, or the motion, the motion on the table was to table the original motion to approve the appeals process. All those in favor of tabling? Got timing, Stu. All those against? Nancy, AJ, and Brian. So that fails. So the motion on the table now is that the board of directors approve. That the board of directors adopt the resolution approving the proposed rules of procedure for appeals. Any further discussion on that? Keith?
The only question I have on that, or maybe a little more discussion or clarity then. So if this does, it sounds like it's gonna get passed, right? And so when you redefine this, which is great, I think it needs to be done because there is a lot of confusion on it. It will not apply to the current people that are going through the appeal process. It'll start there'll be a start date, I guess is what I'm getting at, like February 1 or, March 1st, or is there a
It's
start
right
date
now.
for it to happen?
Right now. If it gets approved, it would be passed and approved.
Oh,
How would you, the point is,
Point is to give the appeals committee a process to use that vetted. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that I agree that there should be a written consistent procedure. I think this needs to be reviewed further.
We have the benefit of Aaron being here to answer questions. Are there any other questions that people have about the process? Because I know I had many when I first saw it and was able to speak with Richard directly about them. And this is believe it or not, a simplified version of what was originally presented.
Other discussion?
I guess one more quick question. I'm sorry, AJ. Real quick. So since legal is here, I guess my question would be legally, is it full to change the process in the middle of someone going through the appeal? Not that I'm going through it. I didn't know people were, but I didn't know, how that is legally.
I'm making sure I understand your question. Given what we were told and the premise that we're relying on in drafting this policy as requested was that there was no definitive appeals process that applied to the current pending appeals. And so the immediate concern was, how does the board ensure due process for the individuals who are currently appealing their violations? And our advice was based on the confusion that even if those current appeals were to move forward under kind of these uncertainty about which rules even applied, that would deprive those members of due process, because there isn't a set standard that the board confidently and the members understand applies to everyone. And if a court was to ultimately look at that confusion, that would create an issue as far as due process. So our attempt here was to create a process that could be used as a standard moving forward and for the current appeals. Now, I wanted to briefly speak to some of the feedback that we received in crafting this policy. Initially we proposed a policy that was quite more in depth, but in the interest of weighing in efficiency and also allowing for due process within this, we attempted to streamline the process. And so this is the resolution that we ultimately proposed, and in our professional opinion, satisfies the requirement for due process here.
So just kind of going forward with Keith's question. So if someone put in their appeal based on going onto the website, clicking that button, printing the appeals process, there is no reason for anybody that's going through an appeals process to think that is not the accepted process. So SVCA not have to abide by what they put on their website and was easily available, would that, it just seems that that's what they have said is the process. Person appealing has no reason to believe it's anything else. There are 3 current appeals that are being held up. Shouldn't they be under the old rules if there were rules posted?
There were 3 sets of rules posted.
But under the, if you go on to the website before the 404 code and you went into appeals process, it was there. And
One of, yes.
but
you're
you shouldn't have
exactly
to,
right.
like, once you go on to the easy button that's very easily found, do you have to dig and see if there's any more somewhere buried in minutes? Or would you not assume that Sudden Valley agrees that this is the process?
The other 2 versions were also available to people who use the interface differently. The way that you use the interface, you found the version that was intuitive to you to find. But if you use the search functionality, which is intuitive to a large number of users, you would have come up with different versions.
I used that and I found this as well.
Okay, all I'm saying, Timey, is that all versions were posted, all versions were accessible to different people. And after use cases in the community, they all came back with, my version is the current version. This is the version we should use because this is the one I found. And that's exactly why there is this confusion. So I totally understand what you're saying, but there are 3 versions out there in the same sort of condition.
But if you appeal,
I mean, I wasn't sure if you posed a question to me there.
I just assume that if you have an appeal with an older version of the rules, you assume that that is how your appeal will be handled. And I don't know that legally you can now change the process midstream for someone who is in the midst of an appeal.
Our understanding when we were directed to draft this rule was that there was no definitive set of rules that have been applied. We understood that various rules and procedures have been used by the appeals committee over the years, but no one could confidently say that this was one set of rules that applied to everyone. So that was why we proposed this new set with the understanding that there was no definitive policy in place.
That's a very lawyery answer.
Well, I think his degree says that he's a lawyer, so. And I think,
If I had gone to him and said, hey, I have this appeals procedure, could you update it for me? It depends on the question you ask the lawyer, how they're going to go from point A to point B.
well, I think there is no clear process in place. And I think even if there was, it's not bad practice to update your processes and procedures. So at this point, I think we need to adhere to our legal counsel's advice. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call the question. The motion on the table is that the board of directors adopt the resolution approving the proposed rules of procedures for appeals. All those in favor? All right, that's AJ, Nancy, and Brian. All those opposed? Stu and Timey. Sam abstained. That motion passes. Appeal process is approved. All right, thank you, Aaron, for taking the time to answer questions for us. We appreciate you coming out.
Thanks, Aaron.
Great night.
Thank you. I'm glad you don't have to come back with this.
All right, the next item on the agenda then is an approval request for the auditor's engagement letter. I'll pass it to Joel, I'm guessing then.
Okay, so what I did is I put out, so this wasn't just, everyone has the Larson Gross, right? Their agenda. You see it? Okay, so actually what this is this is the one response that we got back from the RFP process that I started in September. Actually, I sent them all out on September 19th. So we did a full RFP, just like we did back in, I believe it was 2020, the last time that we did a full RFP process where I send out the, like the full letter and asking, just inviting the firms to send us, between like a 1 and 3 year bid quote for audit and tax services. So I sent it out to 8 firms, pretty much spreading the gamut of, like smaller firms to larger national firms. We got about a 50% response rate from these 8. One of which responded back and said, sorry, they don't do audits anymore, actually the smallest one. And then one firm who responded back and just said they're not taking on any additional audit clients, sorry about that. And another firm who was thinking about it, but then they actually ended up responding back and saying that they felt Larson Gross was, just paraphrasing them, probably better suited for us anyways at this point. I'm guessing probably the scope of our operation. But so then what we did get back is we got back the one quote from Larson Gross here, who is our current audit firm right now. And you can see that, so the fee proposal that they gave back, so once again, they got the same letters that everyone else, inviting them to send us a 1 to 3 year audit quote. So they gave us definitely like a firm quote for the 2023 year end for both the financial audit and the tax return. That's what we asked for from all of them. So, and then they did say in this letter that subsequent annual service fees are expected to increase about 7%, meaning beyond the 2023 year-end audit, which would obviously be conducted next year in 2024. So the one quote that we have back right now is obviously from the Larson Gross. So they gave us total fees. So $35,000 for the audited financial statements, $4,000 for the tax return. So the bottom line is $39,000 for this one. In comparison, Larson Gross is obviously auditing us for the 2022 return. And so for both the financial statements and the tax return, it was $36,000. So it went up about $3,000, which could pretty much be expected with inflation right now. So at this point, it would just basically be up to the board. I mean, the good thing about, I guess, going with a 1 year, if you were concerned that we didn't get back more than one quote, is if you obviously, if you go with this, it is 1 year. I'll do this process again next year as well. I'll do another full RFP and send them back out again, or for at least another 1 to 3 years in 2024 for the 2024 year end at that point. So if there are any questions, any board members?
Any questions? All right, well, I will make a motion that the board of directors authorize the general manager to execute the engagement letter with Larson and Gross at a amount of $39,000.
Actually, it'll be 2 engagement letters, one for the audit financial statements and one for the tax returns. So it'll be for her to sign both of those engagement letters.
I'm going to redo that motion then. Make a motion that the board of directors approve the general manager to execute an engagement letter with Larson Gross for the purposes of the audited financial statements, as well as an engagement letter with Larson Gross for the purposes of the tax returns for the association, totaling an amount of $39,000.
And I guess you could say for the year end 2023.
For year-end 2023 audits
and tax
returns.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question, and I'm not repeating that motion. So all those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. All right, the next item on the agenda was an amended piece. So it's a capital request for the maintenance shop remodel. And I'll pass it to Joanne.
Thank you. This request is for additional funding for the maintenance shop remodel, SVCA Capital Code 9722.08. as per PNW summary dated October 9th, 2023. On October 27th of last year, this project was brought to the board and approved to start design permitting, and it included funding based on an initial cost estimate of $254,657. PNW's summary from the October 27th, 2022 board packet is included in the backup dated October 9th, 2023. The project proposed on October 27th of last year was an interior remodel of the maintenance shop, as it was believed that a full remodel to the building wasn't feasible without bringing the entire building up to code. Through the design and permitting process, it was discovered that the building could receive a full remodel to include new siding, roof, full replacement of HVAC, electrical, and plumbing, new windows and doors, and include the proposed interior remodel. This project will also bring the building up to ADA requirements. The expansion of the scope has increased the proposed project cost, but will deliver what is essentially a new maintenance shop for about 1/3 the price of building a totally new shop. On December 31st of 2019, PNW provided a cost estimate to build a new maintenance shop that was prepared by Carletti Architects with a budget of $1,564,059 that is provided for reference in PNW summary dated October 9th, 2023. So the proposal is that funding be provided for remodeling the maintenance shop per the summary dated October 9th, 2023. This funding includes $6,500 to cover the additional costs of design and permitting for the expanded scope, and $222,241.36 in additional project funds required for construction and oversight, totaling $228,741.36. In addition, the maintenance department requests that a Generac propane generator be installed to power the maintenance shop when the power is out. Often when the power is out, it is because of storms, and the maintenance department is on-site working. Having power in the shop increases their effectiveness and provides a safe working environment. The cost to have a 22 kilowatt propane Generac generator installed with an automatic transfer switch is typically $13,000 to $15,000, not including sales tax. We are requesting that $15,000 be approved for SVCA to add a generator as part of the project remodel. So there are 3 requests associated with this. First, to request the total of $228,741.36 from SURF to fund the new scoped project. The second request is authorization from the Board of Directors to execute SVCA standard construction contract with Cool Runnings with a not to exceed amount of $388,788. And the third request is for $15,000 plus sales tax at 8.6% for a total of $16,290 to purchase and install a Generac propane generator with an automatic transfer switch. Thank you.
All right, since there's a few motions, we'll just open it up for discussion first. Any discussion? Timey?
I'm just wondering, when I look at this estimate and the costs, it says new electrical service PSC allowance, 15,000, new electrical service, new panel and wire allowance, 20,000. And when I kind of looked up costs for putting in a new panel and wiring, and I know that's going to be looking at homeowners, but the upper cost of a panel was 3,000 and rewiring was 10, so that's 13. So even if you assume that this is, quite a bit more heavy duty, we've got $35,000 for electrical and the panel. So I'm wondering why that's so high. And my second question, we actually looked at putting a generator in our home over the last few years. And every time we go and look at it, the cost of the install is more than the cost of the generator. Recently, we found a couple of companies that come in and give you a much better price on install. And I'm wondering if you'd be looking at, because we've gone from looking at about that $15,000 mark for a generator down to about 8. And I wonder if you'd be willing to look at other people to kind of take down that cost from 15,000.
To address your electrical question, during the course of investigation, it was found that electricity is being provided to the maintenance shop from line that is actually first brought into the tall barn. And then there's a relay switch. So there is a great deal of digging and laying of electric in conduit. That's why it's so costly.
But there's also a trenching and backfill of 10,000.
Yeah, but the electrician and the inspections and everything else. So I'm not an expert in construction. That I asked about the cost of the electric, and that was the 10,000-foot answer that I got. If we have boots on the ground kind of questions, we would need to bring in our project manager to answer them.
I'd be interested because that seems really high. And what about the generator? Would you be willing to take a look at seeing if someone can get that in for you at a lower cost?
I rely on the expertise of our project manager to guide decisions in this area, not up to me solely.
Stu?
First question is do they have natural gas there? And did they look at the cost of natural gas versus propane?
I think natural gas is on that side anywhere.
Anywhere?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think gate 3 is like the end of it.
okay.
It's wound its way into gate 3 over the years, but I don't think anything outside of
Anything outside of that?
on the Lake Louise side has anything that I'm aware
I
of.
know way up on the ridge, there's no natural gas. It's all propane, but I was just wondering if it made it over to areas E or not.
I don't believe so, but I don't for sure.
Do not know.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a few questions, Joanne, and it may be that Tyler probably needs to answer. So I know you put out like for 5 bids on this or 6, and you only got 2 back, right? Two contractors. But there was a stark difference between the 2 contractors. 388 versus like 650. And some of the big costs were like the roofing. One of them's like half. And so you got a question, is it the same material being used? And I'm sure Tyler has looked into that, if he's scrutinizing this, I assume it's Tyler. So there was that issue. I was also concerned, also too, the siding. So it was the roofing and the siding. So when I see stuff like that, if I put a project out to bid, that's the first thing I'm looking at for quality of roof, different thickness of metal and so forth. The other question I had is there's lockers proposed, ADA shower, but not for male, female, just one. And I don't know in Washington if that's an issue or not. If that's cool, you could have one shower for both sexes. I realize it's maintenance, but nowadays, you need to accommodate for both. And so I just saw on the plan, there was only one, and I didn't know if that was an issue.
It's only one person would be using the shower at a time. It's considered like a family restroom.
Yeah, but the shower comes out into the locker room. So I didn't know, like.
My recollection is that it was an enclosed shower. I can check that with him as well, but
Yeah, I mean, it's just stuff to think about. So that's all I had was the.
I mean, they'd be bidding on the same materials. Materials are spec'd out, as part of the plan. So they're not bidding on different materials. I mean, I would, if I was gonna make a hunch as to what potentially could be causing the discrepancy in the 2 bid prices, and I've had this on similar projects and working for the county and stuff. And like I built a wetland and one project comes in almost $150,000 less, and it's a lot of it can just be scheduled. The contractors, what do they have on their schedule already? That other company may have been busy, but they're like, I'll throw a number at it in case no one else bids. And if I can get $600,000 for this, I'll find a way to hire a couple people and get it done, kind of thing. Contractors will do that type of stuff.
Yeah.
At that point, the cost of mobilization was like $80,000 difference, if I recall correctly. I don't have it in front of me. Yeah.
Could be where they're coming from, what they actually are mobbing.
I'm just supporting your point there, JJ. That's one of the reasons why there's a difference.
Yeah. So for to me, like being a project manager, typically you'd like to see a couple more bids in, right? Because you only got two and they're half of each other, you know, so something, to me, that's like a red flag. That's all, but like you said, everything should be spec'd and you got a project manager scrutinizing, so it should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, there are times at the county we get one bid, you know, it's an advertisement process and sometimes you get more, sometimes you don't. It all just depends upon how busy everybody is and stuff like that. So, I know we put like a bridge on North Lake Samish out to bid last year and one bid came in and it was way higher than the engineer's estimate. And, when those types of things happen, then discussions have to be had whether we re-advertise it or not. We're getting what appears to be a pretty good bid price in comparison to what some other people, even if that other company is slightly busy and threw out like, a Hail Mary bid just on hoping and praying maybe, like, it doesn't mean like that if they were to put a more serious bid and if they had more time that they would even be the low bidder. Still, they'd have a lot of difference to still make that.
Company that presented the low bid, Cool Runnings, has done other work for us. They are currently working on the tall barn, which uses some of the same materials, and so that's one reason why their cost of mobilization may be lower.
Any other discussion? Well, I'll start making some motions then, I suppose. I'll move that the Sun Valley Board of Directors approve the allocation of an additional $228,741.36 from the SURF as a change order to Sun Valley Community Association Capital Code 9722.08. We have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion on that? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All right, that's Nancy, Stu, Sam, and AJ.
I'm just going to abstain because I had a couple questions that I couldn't get answered, so I feel more comfortable abstaining.
All right, and Timmy abstains, no votes against. Brian, I'm assuming you voted. Sorry, I forgot. Keep forgetting about Zoom.
Yes, I voted yes.
You. Okay, a second motion. I'll move that the Sun Valley Board of Directors authorize the general manager to execute Sun Valley standard construction contract with Cool Runnings with a not to exceed amount of $388,788.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That is same issue timing. Okay, same votes as the last one. All right. I'll move that the Sun Valley Board of Directors approve the allocation of $16,290 from SURF to purchase and install a Generac generator for the maintenance shop.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, that vote's the exact same as the last two. Timmy abstaining, the rest four. All right, we'll move on to the last item on the agenda, which is the appointment of appeals committee members. So yeah, we appoint two members to sit on the appeals committee with Sam. And so I guess basically we can open the floor to nominations and stuff. I would nominate Nancy and Stu.
I am traveling an awful lot for business these days, so I'm not sure I'd have the availability to be on the committee.
You oppose Nancy or?
I can do it. at least until the AGM. But actually, that's good to have somebody who won't be going forward, because if anything goes to an appeal, well, it's the remaining board members. And you wouldn't have to, I wouldn't be there anyway. I mean, an
Right.
appeal of an appeal, whatever.
So I think also, correct me, the plan is that the appeals committee will do a quick meeting tonight to schedule the appeals.
That was the intent, yes.
I'd like to nominate,
And the date of that we're tentatively planning is,
November 2nd.
Nancy, what are you saying?
I nominate Brian. Because you need two, and as I understand it, Stu declined.
Yeah, I mean, in the last month, I've been gone all except for about 3 days, and my schedule will be continuing that way. Just kind of the luck of the draw with you tonight.
Are there any objections to Brian? No objections to Brian, so Nancy and Brian. All right, so if hearing no objections, then Nancy and Brian will join Sam on the appeals. Committee. 3 total, yeah. All right, that is complete and we are adjourned. So Brian is on Zoom. You send him a link quick or how are you?
We propose to use this link and then
Use
edit the
this.
videos.
Okay. Never mind, Brian, you can just stay on and I will just pass it over here to Sam. Only take a couple minutes, Brian. You're aware. Just to schedule.